Hey everyone, it's Gianna Lum at Convincing Crypto, where we keep you in the loop on all the latest trends and news on crypto and blockchain technology. Today, we have a very special guest on our show. We have Steven Ward, the founder of VyFinance. If you want to wave at the camera, you can.
Hi.
It's not Steven's first time on the show, but he has a lot of new updates about VyFinance, the Plutus V3 upgrade, and yeah, just a lot that the team's been working on. So yeah, if you want to just go for it and share what you've been working on, Steven.
I guess we'll start with the V3 upgrade. So
Yeah.
the V3 upgrade isn't actually launched yet. We're launching it ideally, I'm hoping in December. This has been a long, long process to get to this point. Functionally, what we've done is essentially we've redesigned from scratch the way the Cardano dapps are built. And I'll sort of explain in a bit more detail what that means. One of the toughest parts of building on Cardano is the reality that it's a very complex ecosystem to build in. And of course, complexity creates a lot of cost and it also creates a lot of difficulty for builders. So, what we've done is we've essentially spent the last 2.5 years doing a lot of research and doing a lot of work in understanding how can we simplify this process for building dApps on Cardano. And it sort of began with us. Initially, the idea was that we wanted to improve the builder experience for ourselves, right? We wanted to add a lot of complex structures into our V3 DEX. That we realized that we weren't really able to implement the DEX in the way that we wanted, purely because of the difficulty it was to create those structures that we wanted on the Cardano blockchain. So we basically went back to first principles and we decided to, well, a lot of the difficulty in building on Cardano is what I like to call manufactured complexity. And what I mean by manufactured complexity is that, and look, to be fair, even us as early builders on the blockchain, we are also in part to blame for this. As problems arose one by one, we basically solved each problem on a one by one basis, which created a system whereby you've got 50 problems with 50 separate solutions, all of which don't talk to each other because they're all designed to solve one specific thing, right? So we decided to take a step back and basically, from a first principles perspective, we asked ourselves, how can we simplify the process of building on the Cardano blockchain? Now, from
I'm kind of
this,
curious.
we
So your whole
Mhm.
research process, I think that's one of my favorite things about Cardano, that builders are super researched. It's typically peer reviewed. What does that look like for you and your team when you like say research? Are you asking other builders what's going well, what's not? Are you running tests? What does that look
Yes,
like?
we're
Yeah.
always asking other builders what's their problems are, and of course, we're always running tests. So yes to both of those questions. But at its core, and I mean, we started this research process quite some time ago, right? So it's been a fairly ongoing one. What we essentially started by trying to do was creating a unified capacity to essentially solve all of these problems at once. And what I mean by that is within the Cardano ecosystem, we have a lot of dependencies when you're building a dApp. And by dependency, I mean external libraries that we have to rely on to solve specific problems when you're building. Right now, an example of that would be CHAP, which CHAP. We've got Nix. Nix is an absolute mess. If you talk to any Cardano builder and mention Nix, they'll just whack their head against the table. What? That's only two of them, right? There's 7 or 8 dependencies that you rely on for the building of a dApp, and this blows out the code base. As a starting point, all these dependencies add 200 to 300,000 lines of code into any dApp, and more difficult than that is it creates code that the projects have no control over. So when you have issues with interoperability, you don't actually have any system to work out where those interoperability problems are coming from, right? And we call this discoverability in programming, right? It's when I have a problem, how do I discover the solution to my problem? And in Cardano, there's a very low level of discoverability when you're trying to work out what's going wrong with different aspects of the code that you're trying to release. As an example, it might be something that the most common is honestly from the Nix build. But very often, you don't actually have a solution to any of this, and you don't even have a way to identify where this problem is coming from. Rather, you have to manually go through the code and you have to do step by step, rerun it, fix something up, see if that was the problem, rerun it, fix something up, see if that was the problem, rerun it. And it's this sort of endless cycle of trying to figure out, how do I get from these 200,000 lines of code that I have to deal with as a dependency? Where is my interoperability problem? And basically run it through one by one, right? So our research essentially started in trying to work out a way that we would be able to build dapps without having to rely on all of these dependencies, which we were able to achieve. In fact, our safeswaps, which are already launched, they currently run with the only dependency that they have is the Cardano node, right? That's their only dependency. They don't need Nix, they don't need Chap, they don't need Mesh, they don't need any of these other systems that exist as a dependency to run on the blockchain. Now, what we realized essentially halfway through this cycle of trying to figure out, how are we going to make our own production time much more streamlined, was what can we actually effectively produce with the new series of backend that we've produced. And we realized fairly quickly that this new backend that we've produced with a single application, and we call this APLC, and I'll send you a link to the seminar that we had with the Cardano Foundation recently presenting our solution. But functionally, we created our own little programming language called APLC that allows you to directly convert JavaScript-based languages into Cardano smart contracts. So JavaScript-based languages are able to produce UPLC, which is untyped Plutus core, and that untyped Plutus core is then what's read on the blockchain to then activate any transaction on your smart contract. So when we realized that we had this system that allowed us to really bring in these languages that programmers are used to building with, we all of a sudden had a light bulb moment that we went, wait, Solidity is a JavaScript-based language, which means that if we adjust our backend slightly, we're actually going to be able to start producing smart contracts that are readable on Cardano using Solidity. Right now, we personally don't use Solidity. We're using a language called Jai. But functionally, this process that we've created allows builders to put together smart contracts in JavaScript, Jai, any JavaScript-based language, Solidity as an example, right? That's the biggest one for me. That's what I'm most excited about. Because what we really want to be doing is we want to be trying to onboard the next generation of builders to Cardano. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to do when Cardano is written in a schema that is incredibly complex and difficult for builders to be able to understand and work with. So we sort of spent the next 8 months, 9 months after figuring out that, wait, this is a solution that actually goes a lot further than just what we want to achieve. This is actually a solution that could be adopted chain-wide to really onboard new builders to the Cardano blockchain. We started focusing out on solutions to be able to head in that direction. And some of the incredible stuff that we've been able to do, as we'll have out very soon and you'll be able to play with it, we've been able to bring down the amount of data that's used per transaction by 80%.
Wow.
Right? So we're going to have the lowest data usage of any transaction on the Cardano blockchain. And not only do we have the lowest usage of data, but no one's going to be able to beat it because we're the only people with a back end that's actually able to produce it. Mm-hmm. Right? So no one else will be able to do this, at least for the time being, until we make it open source, which we certainly intend to do. Because again, we want to try and onboard new people and new builders into the Cardano blockchain using systems that they're used to using, mm-hmm. right? Rather than having to introduce 8 dependencies with 0 discoverability and honestly a very low level of builder enjoyment. And what I mean by builder enjoyment is builders will stay and build where they are able to solve problems in an effective manner, right? If you don't give them an enjoyable, I say enjoyable in inverted commas, but if you don't have an enjoyable process to putting together a solution, you lose builders along the way as they go, well, I can just put this together on another blockchain far more easily with a lot less intellectual effort and in a manner that makes a lot more sense, where I can find the problems that I have, I can troubleshoot, and then I can actually solve what I need to solve, right? So we basically spent, the last 2.5 years putting together this backend, and this DEX is going to be the culmination of all of that work. As an example, we've been able to run 5 transactions across our backend 5 transactions on testnet across 5 different liquidity pools simultaneously for a network fee of 0.26 Cardano.
So
So
much
that
more
means that
efficient.
it's so much more efficient. We're running transactions at over an 80% efficiency of what any other DEX on the blockchain can do, right? And this is really going to come to fruition when we launch our DEX, and you guys are going to be able to see it, because if you're able to fit more data, that means that you're able to fit more complexity. Because now we've got the space to put in that complexity, and that complexity leads to things like more complex order types, things like OTO, which is order trigger order, stop limits, trailing stop losses, all of these things that don't currently exist on the Cardano blockchain because the complexity doesn't really allow us to implement them. We are now able to implement. The one that I'm most excited for that we're introducing with our V3 DEX is the multi-currency pools. So users are going to be able to have up to 4 separate currencies in one liquidity pool at once. And those 4 separate currencies are going to be traded off against each other, which means users aren't limited to having liquidity pools that just contain the impermanence risk between 2 currencies, but rather they're going to be able to have up to 4 currencies simultaneously traded in the one liquidity pool. And this is very similar to balancer pools that have existed on EVM now for talking 6 years, right? So it really is giving us the opportunity to bring a whole new tool set to Cardano that our blockchain has never had the capacity to play with. So I can't even remember your initial question, but functionally, we're really excited about this DEX because we're going to be able to do so many things that up until this point have been unachievable on the Cardano blockchain. Right. And that includes our safe swaps, by the way. We currently run the only OTC exchange on Cardano. So an exchange that lets you do a private swap between 2 individuals. Right. That was essentially very difficult to do. I'm not saying it was impossible, but it was very difficult to do. And in fact, Sunday Pi from Sunday Swap released an entire report on the theory of how you would achieve this using the current structures. Using the structures that we have, we were able to put it together in a month and a half.
Nice.
Right. So with this, we've been able to introduce a significantly reduced difficulty in producing dapps. And in so doing, as people will see in the next 6 months or so, we're going to be putting out a lot of things that the Cardano blockchain has never seen. So our V3 DEX is really only a first step to introducing a whole host of new tools for trading on Cardano that have never been seen before. Right. And we're really excited for this. I already mentioned a few order types. We've got 8 new order types that are coming. And on top of the 8 new order types that are coming, we've got multi-currency pools. We're going to have the lowest network fees for any trade, the lowest data used on chain, meaning we've got the highest scalability of any DEX on the blockchain. We can run the most transactions simultaneously of anyone else because we take up the less load on the blockchain to do so. So there's going to be a lot of advantages that we introduce. And again, we are looking to work with the Cardano Foundation and IOG to actually make this a public system and a public backend that any builder will be able to access on an open environment.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, love what you're doing. I think it's great for onboarding. It's great for making it more accessible for people. It's making it a lot easier and understandable to use. From my perspective too, I think you probably know that I love things that are more efficient and specifically energy efficient. So the less resources we use, but the more data we also are able to put on one transaction too. I think that's just amazing. I think the environmental impacts, the data infrastructure impacts. I think, yeah, more people also learn from you eventually once you're open source. So thank you for being a leader in this.
Got to try.
You're doing the work. You're doing the work. Yeah, I wanted to ask you another thing. I know you also have the Lava Launchpad that you're working with, and that's was added
that's
to
actually
that's oh, it's
the
added to
VyFi
VyFi, right?
launchpad. Yeah, that's the VyFi launchpad. So
Yeah.
we've actually launched our launchpad. That's always feels like a redundant statement, launching a
Yeah.
launchpad. So we've launched our launchpad. That's actually launched last month now. God, time moves fast. Where we are essentially taking advantage of these structures, of course. We put together our launchpad as well as our Explorer page, and we can now run launches for projects. This actually works in conjunction with our system called Mission Control, and Mission Control is functionally an open launchpad or an open project launcher. That's the words I'm looking for. So anyone who wants to launch a project is able to set themselves up on Mission Control, which is just at the bottom of our site. They're able to create their project page, put it all together, and then they're able to run a launch directly. So this is going to be the first instance of a launchpad on Cardano that anyone is able to take advantage of simply by setting up a launch and then pressing the go button. So our entire target is to essentially remove the barriers between projects launching on our chain or projects starting and launching on our chain. Right, as it is right now, any kind of launch that you want to do, it has to go through one of the launch pads, whether that be ourselves, MinSwap, whoever it is. It needs to be organized on a one-on-one basis. We wanted to get rid of that, and we wanted to create a launch pad that just let anybody launch, right? And not launch like Snack.fun. Snack.fun is essentially a liquidity launch, right? Like you just launch liquidity and go. We wanted to run proper ICOs for projects so that they can raise funds through a proper ICO mechanism, right? And we've successfully achieved that. Lava was our first launch, and we've already got 2 more launches in the works that should be coming in Q1 next year. So there's been a lot of work there, but we're really excited for the amount of positive feedback that we've gotten from the Lava launch. It's been fantastic. And we're really looking forward to continue helping projects launch themselves on the Cardano blockchain.
Very cool. And I saw that they're also focusing a lot on asset fractionalization and real world assets. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's really a growing space and the importance of making it easy to be able to launch RWAs?
Yeah, look, we've got a lot of work that we've been doing together with Lava for quite some time. So Lava, exactly as you said, they run asset fractionalization, which means that you can create a token for assets, and then purchasing that token, you're able to essentially own whatever portion of the assets that are held within that lava pool, right? The vault on Lava that contains the assets that are being fractionalized. Now, that doesn't always have to be RWAs, by the way. That could just
I
be
think
any
other ones
NFTs
too.
of any kind, any assets on the blockchain. It could even be CNTs. You could put together a portfolio with 12 different CNTs, and then that single token is representative of those 12 different CNTs. In terms of a broader scale, I think RWAs really are going to be some of the future things in blockchain, like one of the most important future functions of a blockchain. I still think that there's quite some way to go within the Cardano space to make RWAs as legally sound as they exist on the EVM side. And I mean, I don't want to fall down into a big rabbit hole of talking about season freeze and the different technical issues that exist. But functionally, we have a few issues that still exist in the management of RWAs on a regulated level that we have to solve on the Cardano blockchain. But overall, these issues will get solved. We've just got to figure them out. And we're really excited to be the liquidity partners for these fractionalized assets that are being introduced to the blockchain, right? So if you set up a fractionalized vault on Lava, you will be able to automatically set up your liquidity pool on VyFi. And that automatic setup of a liquidity pool on VyFi means that people that want to buy in and out of those fractionalized asset pools are able to do so directly from our DApp. So we're really excited to be working really at the forefront. I guess we have been in a while. All these things are forefront, but really at the forefront of bringing RWAs to the blockchain and bringing liquidity to RWAs to the blockchain. And I will also second that by saying we've recently just started working, not just started, we've been working with Palm for 2.5 years, but we've started really working with assisting Palm with their liquidity requirements as well. And recently Palm have also added to, or formally started supporting the liquidity pool on the VyFi DApp as well. So there's a lot of really fun things that will be coming. And from a user perspective, right, what we want to try and do is create yield opportunities. That's one of the big things that Cardano has been missing, and that's really what we want to try to introduce as a DEX on Cardano is the capacity for users to get involved with multiple different assets, where those assets are able to deliver them directly a yield so that they're able to try and profit from those assets themselves.
Nice. And we have had Dan as well on the show before, and I'll link that too if people want to learn more about what they've been up to with Palm. But yeah, I'm glad you're working together, and yeah, it's just slowly growing, and I think yeah, people are seeing that it's possible on Cardano.
It is, absolutely.
have the distributed staking mechanism. Do you want to talk more about that and why you decided to pursue that collaboration?
We're doing a lot with Apex. This
Yeah.
Apex bar is sort of the first phase of all the work that we're doing together. I'll quickly describe it. I'm sorry if my entire talk has been full of jargon. I'm just always thinking in a bit of a technical manner, right? So I do apologize for that. But functionally, what we've done with Apex is we've given the holders of the CApex token on the Cardano blockchain the opportunity to stake their CApex into the bar, the Apex bar, and in so doing, they're able to derive the rewards of their staked CApex as if it was being staked on the Prime blockchain, which is the blockchain where their CApex is staked, right? So to put this into a comparison, it would be very similar to as if you held Cardano on BNB and you staked that Cardano into a smart contract on BNB, and then that Cardano on the BNB blockchain was then staked on the Cardano blockchain, and those staked earnings were driven back to the holders on BNB. Right, that's exactly what we've done. And as far as we're aware, this is the first time that there's ever been cross-chain securing of a blockchain using the asset on another blockchain. So we're essentially using the CApex on Cardano to secure the blockchain or the Apex's series of blockchains on Prime, and then the staking rewards are being delivered back to the holders of CApex on the Cardano blockchain. Now, what this really does is it means that holders of CApex on Cardano are still able to derive a yield through holding Apex token on Cardano, just as if they were holding it natively on their blockchain, right? And this in turn is, again, like I said before, driving yield back to users on the Cardano blockchain, which is, again, one of the big problems that we want to solve. We are also working with them to launch the first DEX on their blockchain Vector. I'm not going to go through the whole Apex ecosystem. They've got 3 blockchains, but functionally, we're working with them to put together the first DEX on Vector, which is their UTXO blockchain. And we're also putting together our DEX on Nexus, which is their EVM blockchain. And the beauty is that their Nexus blockchain is actually connected to the EVM world. And that means that their Nexus blockchain is already hooked into what's called Layer 0, which is a sort of big agglomeration of blockchains that are able to communicate through this protocol, and that connects a lot of separate EVM blockchains together into like one big group. What this means is that from Nexus, you're able to originate trades on their Nexus blockchain and essentially send that trade out to the other 150 blockchains to find the best return for whatever trade you want to run, and then bring the result of that trade back to the Nexus blockchain. But what we're really excited for is the fact that we can take this and we can actually turn this system on its head, because we can then drive whatever has been traded on the Nexus blockchain back to Cardano, which in turn means that the ultimate result of everything we're trying to do with these guys, with Apex, is we want to allow users on Cardano to directly trade into Layer 0 to access liquidity from all of the EVM world, and then bring that liquidity back to the Cardano blockchain, right? As an example, we just saw yesterday, someone tried to sell 14 million Cardano for USDA, right? You might have missed that, but that 14 million Cardano that they tried to sell for USDA, at the end of the trade, they were left with 848,000 USDA, which means, right? They lost $6.2 million or so, right, in that trade. And then, of course, the arbitrage bots had an absolute heyday, because they were able to sell it back down. So they just straight up lost millions of dollars. Using a system like the one that we're designing with Apex, you could just come to VyFi, you could sell your Cardano for even USDT or USDC, and then that trade gets routed through the Apex ecosystem into layer 0 and then brings you back the token from layer 0. In other words, it's collecting the liquidity from Ethereum, the liquidity from Base, the liquidity from BNB, all the 150 blockchains that are hooked into layer 0 are being aggregated and then brought back to Cardano. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We always have so many discussions and thoughts. I mean, you hear so many people talking about where are stable coins on Cardano? Why don't we have stable coins yet on Cardano? I mean, I'm sure you hear this all the time.
Not all the time, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many people trying to come up with so many complex solutions. And again, a lot of these complex solutions, because of a lot of regulatory hurdles that exist, because of the structure of the Cardano blockchain, it's going to be very hard to do. And I don't know if it's going to happen in a super time efficient manner. I'm honestly of the belief that I'm not sure if it's ever going to happen at this point. But what we can do is we can create structures that allow us to just bypass all of that and just directly bring USDT to the blockchain and just bring USDC directly to the blockchain. Right? Like, we don't need permission from those companies to have those tokens on our blockchain. Right? We can set up structures that allow for shared liquidity between all of the blockchains, and then drive that liquidity back to Cardano when users want to execute on that liquidity. Right? So we've essentially decided to take I guess you would even call it the forwards route, right? Like, we're not even trying to take a backdoor route.
Yeah,
we're trying to use existing infrastructure to bring it over rather than waiting on what is going to be some theoretical point at which we've solved the regulatory hurdles that Cardano needs. We can instead just bring it forwards, allow the assets to exist, and then just bridge them directly over from EVM. So again, our ultimate goal with Apex, just to really sum it up, is to bring the liquidity from all of the layer 0 blockchains directly to the Cardano blockchain, so users on Cardano will be able to directly access these large liquidity pools that exist across EVM, right? And through this, we're going to be able to expand the entire liquidity network of Cardano, because now they don't have to either wait or go to another blockchain to conduct these transactions, but rather, like that fellow that sold 14 million Cardano yesterday, he would be able to come to VyFi, sell 14 million Cardano, and that 14 million Cardano is actually being sold on Ethereum. It's actually being sold on BNB. It's actually being sold on Base. It's being sold on these places that have got the liquidity to sustain it, and then the token is bridged back to the user.
It's a win-win for everyone, really.
Exactly. It's a win-win for everyone. Liquidity comes to the chain and utility comes to the chain as well. So that's the ultimate goal of everything we're doing with Apex. And this Apex bar was really just the first system where we are proving, as a proof of concept, that we can manage this bridge directly between the two chains, that is ourselves and the Apex ecosystem, and that we're able to drive the value from the Apex ecosystem back to the Cardano blockchain. And it's been successful. Yeah. We're about to do where it's already been served once, and we're about to get another serve in the next 24 hours.
Congrats. I think that's it on time today, but thank you so much, Steven, for just sharing all your knowledge, and never apologize for just sharing so much knowledge with us. I think we appreciate that, and that's why I like having founders on the show, to just hear it from actually your mouth, like the people building on this. So I appreciate that. Are there any last things you want to share just before we head out?
Just follow along. I mean, I'm sure you'll share our socials underneath.
Oh, yeah.
We always appreciate anyone that comes in and has any questions. So if you do have any questions about anything that I've discussed, whether that's be how we're going to bring layer 0 over to Cardano, whether it's about what we're doing with our V3 and the new backend ecosystem that we've been developing, whether it's about our launchpad, if you're interested in launching a token or starting a project, anything that you may think, please don't hesitate to hit us up and ask us some questions. And we're always here to help, right? We're here to help any new builders on the Cardano blockchain. That's our aim.
No, I'll link all your info down below if people want to reach out directly, or you can just ask in the comments, and I can also relay those over to Steven. But yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's it for us today. Feel free to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. Feel free to share this with your friends if you enjoyed this content, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Bye. Wait, if you want.